Alright. So, last video we left off basically creating these logos procedurally using geometry nodes. So what I'll do is pause it on frame 1, and we're just going to grab the hops logo iteration, copy it, Control C. We're just going to make a new file, and I'm going to just Control V paste it, reset its origin, and we can also get rid of the keyframes, we won't need them. We're going to take this in a different direction. Okay, we want to clear keyframes, not delete keyframe. Alright, so now we have our logo. And we can still jump between it, depending on which one we want, but we want to use the hops logo because it was built out of curves. It'll be easier to deal with. So, one thing we want to do is give this more point. So if we Alt-V and we look at it, we see that the logo is kind of efficient. You know, it's rounded in the corners, but it's pretty sparse in geometry along the elongated faces. So let's do something about that. So prior to it becoming a mesh, we want to bring in a resample curve, and this is us editing the original graph. So we want to actually connect that to the curve itself, and let's increase the amount of spans just so we have it nice and rounded. So something like that. And you know, we could also take this time, just because I know what we're going to have to do later. Let's duplicate this. We'll set this something like 3, and let's bring this in. And now we can choose how many spans happens here. And let's change this to something like 0.09, just to give it a little extra thickness. So now, okay, actually we did not mean to take it away. So let's change this one back to being, I believe it was 115. Alright, and that works. So now for this one, we want to deal with that. So in the hops logo, there's a point in which it becomes a curve, and then it becomes a mesh, which is right here. What we want to do is resample that curve, and we'll do something like such. And then for the profile curve, we also might want to resample that. So we're going to Shift D, not I keep Alt dragging nodes, and we'll set this to something like 2. Let's place it. And now whenever we add spans here, we're basically choosing how many spans is happening here. So we're just basically giving it enough geo to be interesting. And instead of us modifying this one, which is the logo, you know, that's what this node is, logo. It just turns a mesh into the logo, which is pretty cool, you know. We'll add a new geometry nodes modifier, and we'll just call this one effect, and we'll press home. And with this one, we can now start doing magic with this. So to me, magic is splitting every face procedurally, and then we take that and we set position of each of them, right? But if we try to set position and we have it offset by the index, we're going to get results that look like this, which, you know, what is this? In fact, let's force it to fit within a range so it makes sense. So let's use a map range, and now you can see that we have this happening over the course of every point as we mess with it, and we don't actually want that. What we actually want is to take a moment and capture an attribute of the face, and we want to capture the face index, and then we want to put the face index in value, and now we actually are offsetting each face individually. But the question is, how many faces do we have here? You know, we can tell how many because we're looking at our spreadsheet here. It tells us 453, but how do we tell the graph how many faces we have, right? So we're going to bring this out, and we're going to use domain size. And like a game of Balatro is just about knowing which cards you need. We're going to go ahead and plug this into the from max, and now we have control over the flexibility of controlling this. So we're already off to a good start here. The other thing is, let's bring in a math node, and we're just going to experiment with using this to offsetting things, and something like that will certainly work in our favor. So now we can raise every face. The other thing is, how do we determine the order of these faces? So we see that it's kind of happening in this sort of order. In fact, if we further it, we can see it growing around, which isn't a bad effect. And then compared to the logo itself, it's just flowing down in the, I guess, the point order. We could probably reverse the curve of that and have it dissolve the logo going in the opposite direction. So let's try doing that. That's something I didn't try in my tests of trying to do this right before. Let's see, reverse curve. And reverse curve appears to do a job. Let's jump back over to our effect. And now we can dissolve both of them at the same time. And we're just goofing off here. What we want to do is actually set the order of this prior. So let's deal with that. We're going to use our buddy sort elements, and we'll set it to face, and we'll sort weight and use separate XYZ, so that way we can do it by the X, and we'll use position. And now whenever we jump through this, we're now dissolving it according to the X, and we're sending it up on the X, except we're not sending it up on the X, we're sending it in every direction at the same time. So let's use a combine XYZ, and we only want the Z. So now whenever we go through, we're sending them directly up, and the number that we're going for here is between 453 positive and negative. So let's try to set that up to be controllable on a slider. So you know me, I love map range, and we'll bring this out and connect this to the min. No, we'll connect this to the max, and we'll bring another one out, and we'll use a math node, and this time we're going to multiply it by -1, so that way we have the opposite, and we'll connect that to the min. And now we can plug this in. So if we go between 0 and 1, it should basically allow us the ability to control this. And we see that that isn't happening. So where did we go wrong? Let's go back. And it goes up to like 453. Okay, no, it's here. My mistake. Positive, negative. Now we plug it in, and we have control over it on a 0 to 1 level. So let's go ahead and set up our lever for that. My apologies, I wasn't being attentive. Input, and for this value, we'll just call this just effect, just 0 to 1. So let's see what we have so far. And we can do more than what we're doing. In fact, we are. In my experiments, instead of having it happen where we translate it just on a singular axis like we have it, or the sort elements, we want to have fun with the sort elements, my mistake. So we're going to bring this out, and we're just going to use a multiply, and we're going to multiply the X by the Y, and that should give us a much more interesting result here, instead of it just being what we were looking at previously. So basically now the logo just kind of slides itself up to a new plane of existence. Very nice. But we can do more at the same time. So we also want to maybe shrink the logo out of existence, or at least shrink the faces out of existence as they get higher. So let's go with scale elements. And with scale elements, once this thing reaches the apex, we can actually adjust its scale. So let's see what that looks like. Right now we see that as it goes down to the bottom, it's giving us the desired effect. However, for us, we want the opposite. So, you know, the quickest way to get the opposite of something for me is a color ramp, just because we can just flip it. So now we have the logo doing the intended effect. So whenever it comes to geometry nodes and just setting these sort of things up, we see that, you know, it's really nothing. It's fun. It's a fun time. You know, I just got through watching the saddest Matthew McConaughey movie where he's a sad cowboy with AIDS while practicing this effect. I was like, oh, this is a nice effect. And I look up at the movie and I'm like, oh, this is tragic. But it was a good movie. I enjoyed it as much as you can, you know, kind of morbid. Anyways, now that we have this going on, we could also get even more fun with this. So for the, how do we want to handle this? So for the group ID, I believe last time I plugged in a random and that did the job. You know, before I actually had multiple things plugged into random, and in this case we could just have random be between 0 and 2, and we are already random enough. I mean, what does more random do? In this case, it's not even needed. So we can just set this to 2, maybe give it a seed of 2. I don't know, I'm just being weird. So now that we have this, we can actually put this on a switch. So I'm going to bring up a switch, and now we can actually check a box to make it come out in a randomized fashion, or we uncheck it and it will come out in a gradual fashion. So it's depending on what we want the switch to do. Do we want the switch to make it random? So we check it, it's random, that will do. So let's bring up the group input, which anytime we bring up the group input, it just reconnects it as a new input. So we are just going to call this one random. So we now have random. We can just check it on the fly whenever we want our effect to be random. And now we have this coming up in the form of something interesting. However, if we want to see this a little bit more visual, we probably need to lower our focal depth a little bit. Focal depth. Alright. And now it's a little bit more visual with how it's happening. So the other thing too is we can determine how far we want this to go up on the Z before it gets to the into its value. So in our case, we have it going from 0 to 1, which is also going from 0 to 1 here. If we want to, we can make it go from 0 to 2, where it basically goes higher before it leaves. We could also make it go from 0 to 0.5, which let's just see how that happens. And of course, that affects the scale as well. So we want to keep this on 1, but we want the ability to map it on the Z to be whatever we want it to be. So how can we do that? I'm thinking math. You know, always math now. I just like playing with math because whenever it works, it's just fun. So we'll just multiply by 2. And now we have our effect really jumping up. And if we want to, we could jump this down to something like 0.5. And we see that it doesn't go very high before it terminates, and that's something that's probably worth exposing. So let's bring up the group input, and we'll just call this Z distance, and we want to bring this up. So now we have a parameter for our Z distance where we probably want our minimum to be 0, we want our maximum to be, I don't know, 6. I know, random values here, and we're just, I don't know why I'm playing the timeline. Let's see, how high do we want this to come up? Let's say our camera's right here. So now all the points come up to here before leaving, which I think is a little bit more cinematic. In fact, I feel an intro coming on as I mess with this, you know. That's the thing about making these, is they improve my spirit and always improves my morale, always. Not that my morale needs improving, but let's see, we have this coming up random. Let's see how it looks gradual, and I think that looks cool as well. And we can go even further with this too. So what if the logo was glowing at the bottom, and then it started reducing the amount of glow as it came up at the camera? You know, that way we can end this on a high note. You know, we can't be ending without a beautiful render result. So let's just get random with it. We're just going to make a big plane, place it down. We're just going to give it a blank material. And let's take a look at this in render mode, which of course gives me a little bit of pause because of, I don't know, I think it's like an Intel bug or something at this point, but we'll give it a moment just for our render scene to show up. And now we are cooking with gas. I'm going to assign this a blank material. We want to get rid of that one, and we want to use a alt material, which is a pulsing material. But instead of it being pulsing, we want to remove all of that, and this isn't going to show up until we use a set material, and then we can have our emission material showing. So this is what we have so far, and if we Alt V, we can toggle bloom in the viewport as of the latest version. And let's say that we want our effect to be something that we view. So let us put a camera here. Let's Shift A, camera, and I'm just pressing Control Alt Numpad 0 to place my camera. And of course the camera requires a little bit more fine adjusting. Let's just place it just right. I'm obsessed with something called the final frame, which is the final positioning. One day I want every logo animation ever done to blend together in one big montage. So as a result, I always have it zoomed out to a certain level. But in any case, enough about me. How's your day? Let's take a look at what we have, and we want this Z distance to rise up even more. And we see that a limit of 6 isn't going to work. Let's give it a limit of 60. Alright, and I keep trying to play the timeline because I'm just so used to having time. So let's go ahead and do that. We want another switch, and this switch will play our animation for effect as an animation. So break it down into logic, like how my brain would work, or, you know, not saying I have a great brain, but I would say that I would have this, and then I would have scene time, and I would have it oscillate using a cosine. And if you check this box, it will just go in and oscillate. And we make sure that I know what oscillate means. Let's also bring in a map range. And for map range, we want to map from -1 to 1. And for this, we also want a few seconds where it just kind of sits still. So just setting it to 0.9, and -0.9 and 9 will give it just a brief moment to just sit still, or we can just take things in. And I kind of want to do a little bit more once it comes up here to the top. Alright, just staring at it, taking it in. And we want to check on this box that says, there used to be a box that would make the node graph stay up. Okay, here we go, pin. That way we can select other objects and our graph doesn't leave. And we're just looking at it, taking it in. Alright, so at the bottom, we want the effect to be very high. So it's something like that. And then when it comes up to the camera, we start losing the emission. Or at least that's just what I'm thinking in my head. Also, let's make our animation continuous. So we have frame 1 as nothing, and then it comes up, leaves at 150. So let's have it be at 150. And let's see, 250 was looking like that. So let's also make sure that we have this modifier, or this thing that we set up, enabled. So we want to go with input, group input. And for our group input this time, we're just going to call this one animated. And really, this one will override the first one, so let's place it up above it. So if we uncheck that, oh, not that one. In the back of my head, I'm also rating music still. All right, let's look at this. Actually, the random one looks kind of crazy. It just takes you into another world, right? Like,
Yeah.
in the far, far future, you have been reconnoitered for the Hops army. Anyways, let us lower the amount of power that's happening here, because that would be cool. I'd like to store attributes, so let's try that. Store named attribute, and we're just going to call this float, and we'll call this power. Alright, I guess we can't interject it either if it already has live connections happening in it. Sorry, I was absent-minded for a moment there. So far, so good. Let's jump over to the shading tab. And is Blender going to make us hang right here? Excellent. Let's Alt-V, or in this case, we don't need to use Alt-V. We just want to make sure that we enable the always from here. Let's try bringing in our attribute we made. Alright, it appears that we did it already. So let's use a color ramp. And we'll flip. And we see that everything is good. And then as it comes up, we start losing things. Except we do want a lot more happening here. So let's bring in a map range. You know, when we need numbers to be involved, that's where map range comes in, right? So we let it play. Of course, it comes to that. But our max, we want to be, you know, let's say 20. And just like that. So I am pleased with that. We were able to get in here and just quickly take the Hops logo, expand on the idea that we did in the last video, and turn it into something. In fact, we probably want to make the background even more black. You know, it should never be complete black, but in our case, we're being edgelords here with the logo. So it's that creeping darkness, right, of the eternal night that's promised to us through, you know, the machine takeover. But that's the next plot. But just like that, we can say that we have successfully created this effect. And, you know, as I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, you know, we could have this be modulated to audio, where the logo is vibrating according to how I'm speaking, which would probably be a lot cooler. You know, we could take it into so many other directions. But I will just wrap the video there for now, and I thank everyone for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Alright, so now that we are at this result, I have to find out if I can take it a little bit further. I mean, that's the curiosity of life that punishes me eternally. I have to know, like, can we take it a little bit further? You know, gotta find out. So we'll just call this logo, and you know, that will hide that because we don't need it. We'll take this plane, we'll give it a new graph and give it its own graph. Dang, that graph was pinned hard. So we are going to replace this with grid. Okay, it's not able to do it like that, but it works like that. Let's Alt-S, place it back to just regular scale. And this is going to be a secondary adventure that we're taking. I'm going to 2 points. So mesh to points will turn face to points. And I'm just going to drag the logo in. And I was hoping that the logo would have had like some stuff, Let's try bringing it in as a group. Logo. Let's try bringing it in as a dissolve effect. Do we have it? Let's try plugging the logo into it. So now we have the logo. And we're just making sure that the animation's there. We just want to turn that off. So we have nice control here. Interesting. All right, maybe this will work out. Really freestyling it here. Instance on points, and we'll plug our instance here. Let's see what we have here. We lower this down to nothing. And really, the reason I'm doing this is because there's no reason why this wouldn't work. That's the thing. It should just be easy breezy for geometry nodes. And if it doesn't work, that means there's something wrong with my intelligence. So now we have the logo dissolving like so. Let's take a look at it in render mode. And nothing impressive so far. But let's keep going. So with our grid, we did talk about previously how we want to be able to expand the size and width based off of our numbers. So let's put this out to, say, an integer, right? And now we can just expand on this. And we also want to do the same thing here. So like so. So let's try multiplying this by, no, not you. We take this, multiply it by 0.5. And we also want to do the same thing to this one. 1, 2. All right, and that is not correct. Let's bring up a math. And we want to subtract 1. All right, let's think about this for just a brief moment. So basically, when I add a unit, I want to add another square, but I also want to multiply it by 0.5 on the x-axis, right? So let's say we're dealing with just the x and we're not involving the y. So let's just test this before we break this apart. That's just with 1, 2, 3, and we also need the y to compensate. That's probably what we're looking at here. So we're just trying to watch the y. All right, let's try it again. But we'll plug this one into the y. All right, and I still think I did it wrong. You know, or I've done it an alternate way. One of those is correct. So we're just doing an 8 by 14. Doesn't matter. I'm being super obsessive here. Also, one moment. God, it gets hot in this office. All right, I'm back. So let's take a look at what we have. We now have, you know, I always look at people's purses when I meet them. They probably think I'm they probably think I'm LGBT, but really I'm just, you know, because everyone has these purses and it's like they're either fake or not fake, and most people don't care. But it's just a curiosity of mine to just see. Let's do it animated, and we want our Z distance to reach higher. So something like this. Let's look at it from camera. And that really looks interesting. Let's go ahead and enable animated just so we can see it on a loop. And we could probably have the amount pulse out and lessen. You know, before we modified the material, it would have been just a pulsing material, so we did turn that off in order to make it what we have. But we're just looking at it and just analyze and just thinking what we want to do with this. So I'm thinking, what if I could take it even further? Let's turn off animated, and I want to place an empty. I'm a big fan of empties, love empties. So to match the emptiness I feel inside, we'll add an empty, and we'll jump back to plane. We'll pin this graph, and we want to deal with proximity to this. So I'm going to take its location and plug it into points, not that point, point. And for some reason you have to take it and plug it into position. And we're just testing to make sure that it's matching. And it wasn't, you know, it was on original, it was mucking about, as they say. I think I said that in my other video that I haven't uploaded yet. I'm actually working on the mech underneath this video. This is just me giving myself a small dopamine benefit for completing a task, so which is more work. So what we want to do here is use proximity, geometry proximity, and we'll use geometry. Let's plug this into, not logo, logo's fine. We'll control H and collapse that, and we can collapse it even lower because we really need nothing of the logo unless we want to get real weird with it. And let's plug this into effect. And of course it's not going to just work. Let's take a look at this, but we want to look at our distance and just see what we're getting here. And now we are cooking. So let's take this and math and power. Math first, then power. And just power just, okay, let's plug it up so we see it. Alright, I was going to say, yeah, the thing about power is power just hits. It just hits. I don't know how to express it. And let's see what we're getting here. And it looks like something is happening with, you know, I wonder if it's realization that breaks it down. No. We could press M just to calm it down a little bit. Let's test it out. So we're able to move it, and that is dependent upon the original one. So somewhere is the original one, and that one's being affected. So I wonder how we can get this to happen in the way that we want it to, because obviously it would be cooler if it happened across the board as we move things. We were able to get it to dissolve. So I'm actually hitting something that I don't know if I know the answer for. Alright, let's think. Let's try faces. Nope, has to be that. And we still have things we can do with the logo. I mean, nothing relevant to what we're doing here. Just being weird. Alright, let's get rid of that. That's not helping. So we have this. We wanted it to affect this. And we see that we have it affecting it on a points level, which is never what we want. So how do we feed this face information in order to have this happen based on the proximity data? And also, which one is it affected by? Let's look at this from render mode. And we kind of have something here. We have something that we're working with here. unless we store this attribute. Can we store this attribute? Alright, no, that can't work either. Let me pause and think about this for just a brief moment. So, we're going to pick up from where I left off with the previous part, which is basically the logo, doing the animation, and we're just going to pick this back up clean. So, let's look at our plane. This is our plane. Let's Alt-S, reset its scale, because we're about to handle it via nodes. We'll Alt-G, place this location right to. For the logo, we'll want to rename it logo, and then just uncheck its visibility because we won't need that. And let's unclick the pin the graph, just because we'll be pinning a new graph, this graph. So now this is our graph we'll be working with. So for our grid, we want our grid to basically grow dynamically, but we want it to grow to fit our camera. So let's get rid of that. And this is what we're looking at so far. Let's bring this out as an integer. And for this, we'll multiply this by a value. I hate that bake is the first option there, even though I need to probably use it. 0.25. So whatever we have here determines the size of the x. So now we have a procedural x happening. And then if we Control-Shift-D duplicate this, plug it into the y, we also have a procedural y. So we have something like that. However, we probably need the y to be unique. So, you know, despite us wanting to be consolidated, that just isn't our fate. So for the y, we'll set this to 19, and then we'll set the other one to 33. Seems a bit excessive. You know what? Let's scale it up. How many logos do we want? That's the question we're asking ourselves here. So I'm lowering my count. Let's see, 0.75, 11, and we'll lower our y to be maybe 6, and we can scale it just a little bit. No, it's cheaper to lower the camera, but let's look at it. Are we exceeding it? Yeah, we are. So just cheese easy, and now we are positioned how we want to be, sort of. I mean, and we can always, of course, deal with our global scale for this as well, but we're just having fun here, just setting ourselves up with a dynamic grid. Sorry to over obsess with it. From here, I'm just going to jump to the chase, where we're just going to use a for each, because we're going to convert this into a series of points to points, and we want to convert faces into points. And now that we have this, we can actually solve the problem I was trying to do before, which I'm sure there's a answer that can be done without me having to use a for each, but let's see, for each point, we want to instance on a point, one instance on that point. So let's bring our logo in, but we don't want it like that. We want it like a group. So we want the dissolve effect, and then we want to connect the logo to that. So we have this, and let's bring this out to a value. So now we can control the scaling, even though it's not even, in fact right now, we can see it animating. Let's turn off overlays, and we can see it happen. And so far so good. You know, we got that Gucci look happening. But we want something more unique, something proximity based. So for this, I'm just going to collapse that, place it above. We're going to turn off animated, so now I can animate it manually using the effect. And thanks to for each, we are actually placing one instance on this each time, so we can actually get unique with it. So with our grid, let's look at this. We can actually use a proximity, but before that we want to bring in an empty. So I love a spherical empty. Let's Alt G, make sure that that is in the center. So here's our empty. We'll drag it over into the node editor, add it to our soup. But before we do that, let's create a point. And if we create a point, we can connect location to that, and then we can connect that to geometry. And we can thank Dr. Zen for that useful tip. And if we connect up to our distance, I don't know why it's so black. It's not supposed to be black. Alright, let's look at it with points, and it looks like we were needing to look at it with points. So far so good. And basically we want this to affect this. So maybe we can affect it just from the outside. Let's try it. This is a slightly different approach than what I tried before, where I stuck it in here and then brought it out. So we see that it's unified across all of them. So let's try it the other way. We'll connect it there and then go to effect, and now we see that we have the proximity affecting it by distance. So no more of that nasty point modification business happening. We have this simply doing what we need it to do. And so if we look at our camera's here, and the Z distance has been messed up. So we want to bring the Z distance up, and now whenever we move it around, it's bringing it up to meet the camera. And we have things happening according to the empty. So we're in a good place. If we were making this some sort of ad wash, I would have it start around the edge and then come to the middle, and maybe even scale up in size. So, you know, I use a point, but let's try using a UV sphere, or maybe an icosphere. You know, I think icospheres are cheaper, so that's what makes my brain kind of think of them. Let's go with transform geometry. We'll plug up a location. We'll collapse this. Let's see, that's what we're looking at. Radius. So maybe something like that. And how serious do we want this value to be? Because I see that it's kind of chaotic. Let's bring a math in. You know me, I try to use power now, you know, like a smart person, even though all I know is it just makes it intense, like so. Let's connect that up, and we'll connect to the other side. And we probably want to adjust some of the values happening here. So let's say that we want our I think I like what I'm seeing here. We would just have it animate happening on the outside, and we bring it here. So basically we now have it happening the way that I wanted it to. There's no way I was going to let the video defeat me. Alright. And then we could also still have this happening animated. So let's say we wanted it to happen, you know, actually animated and also happening here. I wonder how we can make that work. So let's take this. Alright, and I'm just moving the empty around, and that's not working, of course. So it will work if we have it here. but we have to turn off effect. Alright. I keep adding extra criteria in this to make it more messed up. And I'm just seeing if scale adjusts anything, just making sure. You know, sometimes it does, but we probably have to connect scale here. Alright, and I think we actually have the end of the animation set up here. Alright. We'll place our empty here. Frame 60. We'll move it over here. And let's scale our empty up. We'll bring it here. And let's bring the scale back to something neutral. And we could even have this where they all consolidate into a singular version of the logo, which I don't even know how to do what I'm saying, but that means we are giving ourselves another challenge here, right? So let's let this play out. Trying to get it to have this kind of a time freeze look to it. But we probably want the animation to also play. So we want this to be like a filter that's happening, a double effect in a way, because we need the animation to always fill it in, so that way we can sit still and the effect still plays out. For example, right here, let's take a look at what we have, and her email's an invoice. So what do we do here? I'm thinking compare, and if it's greater than a certain value, then we start animating. Alright, now I wonder how we could have them happen at the same time together, because this is us trying to force them to happen, but that's not really organic, right? And also, we have this on a constraint, or at least we have this happening with being random. Let's see how it looks with us have it happening in a non-random state. You know what it could be is the Z distance. We take this, we use a map range, and we let the Z distance be max. Let's see how that looks. Let's try it again, but in reverse this time. So now we let it play out. And I like the look of that, but we do want to bring this down. So, you know, I almost think that we could play with some of the effects here. Like, for example, the Z distance, we could have this pulsing, which would help us with our animation. I mean, let's see, cosine. We're just thinking on our feet here. And we'll use frame. And if we map our range from -1 and maybe connect seconds so it's a little less spastic. And we're just seeing what we're able to get as far as automated animation control happening. You know, at this point when it's sitting still, we kind of want it to flow a specific direction. So let's just get rid of this and just look at this. So we have this happening like so, and then whenever it gets here, we could actually go from I and lower this to 0. Alright, so something like that. And then what if we wanted it all to consolidate into one point? Well, we could try this super lazy way to do it, which would be, in my mind, to basically scale this all the way down to 0 and then merge those points. I just thought of it just now. It has to work. So let's try scaling everything down like so. So we bring it down to that. It'll go through its animation, and then when it's here, we just scale it in. Let's see, so we have this here, I, and of course the last frame has to be perfect. We can't have it be less than perfect at the end. And for that, I'm thinking that we can put math on this. Math's always the answer for me. So at the end, we're adding nothing. So everything is normal, normal, normal. And then when it comes here, we finally bring it to something that makes sense. So we start adding to it, and it really needs nothing much added to it, just like -3. So let us look at our animation so far. And it shows, you know, the combination of ideas that come together and make one tool. That is HardOps. Which is totally what I was going for, you guys. But we're just being random here. Just having a little fun, just playing around with the Hops logo. Just turning it into an ad. Just something simple at the end. Still looking at it, thinking about it all. And, you know, we have it going through this process at the end. Where's that at? That is here. We're adjusting our scale. We should put this out into a value, just to, you know, what would lapel do, right? So, and I'm talking about Jonathan lapel. So we want to right here. We bring this down. And I wish I could see the keyframes for this. Let's see, maybe I can locate it. And now that we have this here, we can put this on a float curve. And with our float curve, we can actually have fun with how it extrapolates from one value to the other. So right now, it just does that. But now I'm into the idea of putting little bounce curves and things just to see how they respond. Just gives things a nice little slap. Alright, let's bring this over. Let's try that again. And we just have it stuttering just at the wrong time. So I wonder if we can get in here. I forgot how you move the graph around. Alright, there we go. Blender's 800th window with a special configuration system. Alright, and we're just letting our animation play out. And everything comes together in the end. And you know what? I don't think it works out here. We'll have to find this actual keyframe for the value, which we could find it easily by going to the animation tab. I was going to go to the animation window, but it's easier for us to just go to, I guess, the dope sheet, and we locate let's see, value, is this value 002? We don't know what this thing's name is. Value 002 is who it says it is. So we'll select these two, just press T, just give it a bounce. Alright, and now we have that bounce. So sometimes it's just easier to just do it that way. I'll have to revisit why I failed there. Not in the middle of a video, but boom, boom. And it really just adds a kineticism to it. However, it needs to happen faster. Let's let that play out again. Alright, let's bring that window back out again. You know, graph editor, not the graph editor. Boom, boom. Let's bring this over. Let's try it again. Alright, and then we want that maybe 215, but we don't want it to happen at the very end. We need that to be corrected sooner. Just having some fun here. And how soon do we want this to come in? You know, now it's just a matter of us just getting in here and playing with our timings. So we do the part where we're searching across the surface, and then boom, boom. How long is that boom? That boom needs to happen a lot faster. I would say from the moment we decide, you know, boom, and shift up arrow used to jump forward about 10 frames. It doesn't anymore. I don't know what does. Blender's getting bam, bam. And what do we want to do here? We have this opportunity where we can scale this. Maybe not here. You know, we can't scale it here. We can scale here. So let's put a scale element. And we want to scale the whole thing. You know, I'm just two instance. I'm just, you know, it's just funny. Sometimes, you know, it humors me to think like I think. And we just want to scale instances. And we'll just scale it like so. So, you know, for me, I'm just such a hack that when I just don't know what to do with something, I just turn it into a instance, and then I'll turn it back into a group. I mean, you know, it's just easier for me. Boom. And then it hits here. let's press I here. Let's jump it up here. And then we jump it back down to 1. But, you know, when you do such a change like that, you want to put hang time in there. At least for me, just boom. So it's like advertising cereal. Boom. You know, you gotta stick this in your mouth. Just kidding, but that's the attitude when it comes to cereal. Stick it in your mouth. Alright, so moving along. Bow, bow, bow. And the bam bam is so low T, right? Like we got so little testosterone in this. Let's go back. Let's look at right there is the apex of its scale up, and then it comes in, and we need that coming in to hit hard. And if we press T, we can change this to bounce. So it's just boom, boom, boom. Let's bring it out a little bit so it has a little boom time. Maybe not too much boom time. Boom. Let's try it again. And I'm no animator by any means. I just have fun with keyframes. I'm just a keyframe connoisseur, so don't judge me too harshly. But we can definitely tweak this to feel better, to feel snappier, to slap that logo in there to say, hey, bow, 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 bow. Now we're just bouncing around. And we could probably rotate them all, each instance of them individually. And I mean, we would just tweak this forever and ever, layering stuff on this. Alright, so let's look at this again. Boom. Alright, now this part where it sits there and then it decides to bring everything in, I want to think about that. Let's go look at this. And that is value 002. Alright, let's bring that back. Alright, and it's already feeling better by every adjustment of keyframe. Whap, whap. And for this whappings, these moments of whappings happening over here, we probably want it to whap right, so let us rotate our instance too. And can't spell right. Thank you, Blender, for helping me out there. And we want to combine XYZ, and when we get to this part, we can rotate it on the Z like so, and we're going from 1 to whatever we're going to here. We're just going to map range from, let's see what they start at. This is our value. We're mapping from a value of 1, and our max is 433 to 0 and 1. We'll leave it at 0, and then we'll just go to, I don't know, that. Let's try plugging that up. Well, and maybe we can have some fun with this. Let's float curve, just to be a little weird. Alright, trying to make this thing more random. There we go. Alright, let's try that. we would probably want to let's plug this into the factor. Alright, so that's not going to work out. I keep trying to be random there. I should really evaluate that. Sometimes I'll just try something over and over and over, just seeing if I can make that work out. WAP. And we could also have the emission adjusted by the amount happening here. So WAP, and almost want something else to happen. I mean, we just keep layering it on, right? Like, what if I want like a bunch of other logos to just grow out from this setting itself into place? Because this beginning animation is something that I'm not even the biggest fan of. But it was always intended to just be a placeholder. Let's turn on recording. Let's bring this up. Let's try bringing it over here. So it does like a bit of a search, and you know, I almost want these to be of a different color as they're being searched for. And then in the end, we could probably also lower the amount that's happening so it darkens out, or not. That bodes bad for the tool, right? Like, we're shutting the lights out. It's like the last episode of Cheers or something. We don't want that. So boom, 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 boom. And just thinking about this. So what if we wanted them to each be a unique color of instance, like a random color each instance? That might be a little bit tougher to do. How would we do that? I don't know why I keep giving myself conundrums I have to think about on the fly. I am going to go inside of the Solve effect, and for this thing we probably want to just store the attribute of color. So yeah, if we store the attribute of power, or color, no wonder it was being modified when we were changing it. We can adjust our color on the fly, hopefully. So let's try that. And I don't even know if these are in the right order. I don't think it matters. So let's jump back over to shading, and we look at our material. And it's just down to our emission. Alright, well, we do have that. So what if we want it to be random though? Do we have random color? No. Color ramp. And we could change this to something like, let's see, I think it's, yeah. And we should be able to get this to get some really interesting colors in here. There we go. Some different colors definitely is breathing some life to this thing as I'm looking at it here. But let's focus on the graph at hand that we're messing with here. So we want each instance to receive a different color. So let us go back to this, where we're back inside the geometry nodes, and we want to be messing with our plane, not the dissolve effect. And maybe color can be exposed on the outside. So let's go to input, group input. Alright, and let's make sure that the shading is actually set up to be connected to it. Yeah, we got a little weird there. over here being really random. Alright, let's look at geometry nodes. Alright. Alright, I think we got this. Let's go back to this. Wrong one. Let's go back to the right one. And what we want to do is take the value that we have. I don't even know what color options we actually have here. I mean, as far as manipulating color. So if we take this and we HSL, let's see what we got. Material, color. It'd be crazy if we didn't have HSL. Alright, so I need to randomize the color a bit based on the distance. So let's see. Separate XYZ. Combine XYZ. Let's see. Am I able to just do that? Math. The answer is always math in my world. Alright. We're getting something. Alright, and we want to pin this graph so we stop having it disappear. And we want to use the value from the inside. Let's bring a multiply or another math, just so we have this happening in a more visible fashion. There we go. I know, this is the weirdest way to go about this, but I had to think of something on the fly very fast. And so now we'll place this in the middle. Boom, boom. And we're just looking at our final result. Just goofing off, playing with our logo. Boom. So what if we also want the emission to be controlled, because maybe having it be so bright is problematic. And also, I'm debating on what I want to have done with the effect that's coming out of this, but I think we have gone far enough on this. So I will end this here for now. You know, we're just getting in here, just playing with the logo, exponentially adding to it. We started off animating the logo. We took that, instanced it onto a plane and started using that. Let's go back to our node graph. We ended up reusing that inside of a, still looking at the wrong graph. Okay, I'm not used to having the geometry node graph look like a texture node graph. That was what's going on. Alright, it's growing on me. Almost want the emission to grow at the end. So let's experiment with that before we get out of here. Alright, so right here, we'll set a keyframe with I, and then we'll scale it up higher to something unreasonable. And we'll set this to 100, and let's see how that looks. And what if we had the emission weaker just at the beginning? So I'm saying something like this just to start us out. But, as I look at it, I'm almost like, I want like a reflection to be happening on something underneath this. So because we turned the plane into this, we got to make a new one. This one's now the logo plane. and I'm stroking out. Let us Shift A, we'll add a plane. Let's look at this with all of our elements showing. We want to turn off auto keyframing. Alright. Now that that is scaled out, let's put a blank material. You know, I'm just going to Shift A. For this one, we'll give this one a basic reflective material. Let's Alt V, EVHQ. And let's see how that helps us. Not too much. Scene light, scene world, and also we have this completely black. Let's make sure our empty's in a place where it can help us, like actually above the scene. Alright, and we're just having a little fun here. You know, how do we want this thing to even influence this? You know, do we want this to even show up in the glossy? And I'm still looking at that outside at the beginning, thinking about how we can have that be animated differently. But yeah, with that, we can wrap up this video. It went on longer than expected, but I can go on all day.